What's up, amigos? Commander Jaime here today. Today I'm excited to show off a Welstra deck profile specifically for Standard. And so I'm going to cover what the deck does, some of the card choices, and also some promos that later on that hopefully English will get soon. So let's get right into it.
I'm also a METAFY coach that has helped numerous players get their results in tops. I actually help with the Standard, V Premium, and Premium formats, and I help you prepare for tournament preparation as well, so that way you get your results that you're looking for and helping out with your goal. I just want to help the community grow, and feel free to book a session with me. And also to help you out more, I also just came out with the book How to Win Cardfight Tournaments, Break Through Your Mental Barrier, and Topping Trading Card Game Tournaments. And so it's available for Kindle, paperback, and also the audiobook will be coming out soon. And it's the #1 new release as well. So I'm excited for you guys to see the content and value from it too and your results.
So this deck is really unique and it uses the operate mechanic. And so with Brand Gate decks, we have set orders that we place and rely on. And essentially the cards in the main deck itself just operate them. And then depending on the set order that you use is the actual skill that you get to resolve during the main phase or even during the battle phase too. So I'm going to kind of go over the right line as we go up through the grades themselves and explain the product orders as we go along, so that way you can kind of see the full picture of what the skills do for the deck. So with the starter, you can play any starter, but really the grade 1 is what you want to have moving forward for Welstra. So this is Strasser, and so really it has the skill when it's brought upon onto grade 2. So when you do so, you can actually search for a product that's of grade 1 and either from deck or your hand and place it onto that set order zone. And if it was from deck, you shuffle your deck, and if it was from hand, you just draw a card, which is really nice. It's kind of like a deck filter if it's in deck. You also replace it if you do have it in hand. You know, if you played Prison before, you understand drawing that Prison card is not the greatest thing early on. But essentially the product order that you will place is with this card. Again, we don't have the promos such as like Versatile Assembler or the grade 1 product order that's like the Doghouse. We don't have that in English, and so we're going to be using this card that's placed. It doesn't do much except that when it's operated, you can choose one of your opponent's front row rearguards and retire it, and if you did not, you can draw a card and then also just discard another card from hand. So it's like a filter in case you can't do that. Most of the time, you won't be really using this card's skill unless you really need to get rid of a rear guard early on, such as if they call it like front row rear guards that are trying to be aggressive on their turn 1 place, for example. More than likely, you're actually going to be hard mulligan for this grade 2 product order. And you can play them as normal orders, they'll just end up in the set order zone. So it's still valuable to be able to have these in hand because the effects put them straight to it, so it gets around that. So that's why you can have multiple orders in a sense at one turn. And the set order, this product order is really good. So whenever it's put into the set order zone, you can draw a card and soul charge 1. So it replaces itself, it helps fuel the soul for later effects that you need. And the skill during the main phase when it's operated, you can check the top 5 for a card that is the same grade or less of your Vanguard and call it to rearguard circle. But if it was during the battle phase, you get to draw a card. So one way or the other, you're still plussing. And usually the main phase 1 is where you can start building up a board where you can actually be aggressive and also fix up your lines, and then also call cards that will refund counterblast or also fuel up the soul for future usage as well. So because you wrote up to grade 2, you're technically on Uber, for example, and what Uber does is essentially is that an axe skill, you can soul blast 1 and operate any card that you have on the set order zone. So like I mentioned, you'll more than likely use the grade 2 order, and since there you operate it, you can actually start building a field. If you have other cards that also operate during that turn, you can start +1, +2 cards onto the field and really have some aggression behind that too. You can have columns, 2 columns, Vanguard or the rearguard column, or you can start forming like the 2 front row circles so you could have 3 attacks. So it really just depends on what you're trying to accomplish that turn. And then as soon as you ride up to grade 3, the other skill is very similar, except that you put any product order from your order zone, send it to the drop, and then you look for a grade 2 product order. And so you'll be looking for the grade 2, this one, to get another draw, get another soul charge if you haven't seen it too. But you'll be on Welstra at that point. So now Welstra can be your Vanguard, and it operates during the battle phase. So when it attacks, operate. And it has a second skill that's actually pretty unique, where anytime that you operate a card, it gets +5k until the end of the turn. It stacks too. So if you did it 4 times, you'll get +20. So your Vanguard can easily get bigger by itself without the need of a booster as well. There will be cards that will get the grade 3 order, specifically this one, which has a very, very long name, but I like to call it just maximum for short. And so this card cannot be played normally. So if you have it in your hand, and even if you're on grade 3, you cannot play normally. So you have to use other cards in the main deck that can put an order into the set order zone. So that's how it gets around it. But once this card is on the set order zone, you can actually operate it, and then of course just retire something on your opponent's field. You get to choose what it is. It could be in the back row as well. And then your opponent's Vanguard gets minus 5k until the end of the turn. So you can start decreasing power on your opponent's Vanguard, which makes it a lot harder for them to guard easily against your attacks. And this deck does have the ability to multi-attack. So the second part of its skill, it has an optional cost. You can counterblast one, bounce a rearguard, and call this to an open rearguard circle as a 23k beater. So phenomenal. So during your battle phase, as you're operating during the battle phase, you can essentially get to 5 attacks if you have 2 copies of this card. More than likely, you'll have 4 attacks consistently, pretty easily, but if you can get to the 5th attack, that's even better. And if you're operating multiple times, especially with this order, you don't have to fully resolve the second part of the skill each time you do, so you can take advantage of the first part multiple times before you actually call them to the open rearguard circle during the battle phase. So your opponent can be minus 10, minus 15, minus 20 if you're all out. However many times you operated, but you essentially can really make it hard for your opponent to guard, and that doesn't even count if you persona ride in the future as well. So onto the rest of the main deck, we have the orders that I want to cover. So most lists that I've seen play 2 copies of the grade 1 product order. I am playing 1. So for the reason for the 2 is because if it does get damage checked, you still have the second one left in deck or in your hand to be able to play when you ride up to your grade 2 turn. I found out that it's not really as worth it. And so for example, if I do miss out on this card, more than likely you still want to hard mulligan for the grade 2 product order that actually you want to start operating on and get the effects from that. So it's super valuable, right? And so with that being said, I felt like I could reduce this to 1 and just kind of get away with it, and then make room for something else to help with it. If we had a dog house, for example, I've considered maybe 1 and 1, or maybe just one of the dog house in the future too as well. But I just wanted to minimize the amount of orders that we have because they are shieldless, and more than likely we're not even using this later on because you'll be using other product orders that are just way better. The next, we are playing 4 copies of the grade 2 product order. This is phenomenal. This one is, again, you get to draw and soul charge. So if you have it from hand, it replaces itself. If you ride onto Welstra and put this into from your deck to your order zone, you essentially +1 as well in the hand. So just a really good card, and you can keep playing as many copies as you want to really just keep drawing into your deck deeper and filling up the soul. You'll be surprised that there's some cards that use up the soul heavily if you're greedy with it too. Lastly, we are playing 3 copies of the maximum. So this is in case if one of them does go to the damage zone, or for whatever reason gets milled and then you have it in the drop zone. There's no way to recycle orders, which I feel like the deck would appreciate more. And then you want to have 2 in your order zone, so that way you can get to the 5th attack. If you only have 1, you'll be able to only do 4 attacks, which is not horrible, but ideally you want 2. Then we're to the grade 3s. We are playing 3 copies of Welstra, just to have more copies of persona writing. There is a card in a grade 2 slot, which I'll cover, that actually is able to search for a copy of your Vanguard. So you can actually search for your persona right, so there's no necessity to have that one Gradius Growlout, the cup, to be able to activate persona right, especially if you're going to prioritize the product orders to activate, such as the grade 2 one. And so that's why we just play 3 more copies of Welstra so we can take advantage of persona right still. Now into the grade 2s, we're playing 4 copies of Fry Height. I hope that's how I pronounced it correctly. So this is the bread and butter. This is really the other card in set 9 that really made this deck playable. So when this is placed onto rearguard circle, if your order zone has a set order already, you can counterblast 1, discard a card, and search either a copy of your Vanguard or a product order, and then add it to your hand. And then in addition, if you have a Welstra Vanguard, you can put any order from hand into the zone. So you can search for a different card if you want to, and then put a different order that you already had in hand. So you could be flexible in that sense, but more than likely you'll be searching the one that you want to play right away. And usually it's the maximum, the grade 3 product order. That's how you can play that order into the order zone. And so that's why this card's even more important. And it also can search for the grade 2 product order if you already have an excess of the grade 3s in hand. Or if you really need Persona Ride, you could also do that. The second skill is really cool too, is that when this unit attacks Vanguard, you can, if you have Welstra, of course, you can Soul Blast 2 and then operate. So this helps with more battle phase operations, and that's where you can start doing the maximum more than once. And so you can get to the 5th battle because Welstra will operate once during the battle phase, and now this Freiheit can do it as well. So that's how you get to the 5th battle. Now again, we don't have versatile assemblers, so we have to make do with what we have. We have this older grade 2 that we had in the first set, and essentially if you have not operated yet on place, you can kind of Soul Blast 1 and operate. So this can be during the main phase where you can start proccing, maybe building up your field for the grade 2 product order. You could also reduce your opponent's Vanguard with the grade 3 product order, so this can help start proccing that outside of the battle phase operates. So that's why I felt like I wanted to play another card that operates, and I do play more in the grade 1 slot too. And so this is essentially what I replaced from the grade 1 product order to make a little more usefulness on just having cards that operate in the first place. The second fact is that during your turn, if you already operated a product this turn, then this unit gets a continuous plus 5k. So this is an 8k base, notice that. So plus 5 will make it 13. So this can hit over Vanguard. If you reduce their power by 5k, then that demands 10k shield, which is really awkward in overdress still. And then obviously further along, it'll start demanding more shield if you reduce their power even more so. The next grade 2 that we're playing is 2 copies of Sordeo. So this is a countercharger. There's a better countercharger such as Bubble Mine in the grade 1 slot, but again, since we don't really have versatile assembler, this is what we got to work with. Essentially when you operate the maximum product order, if you did not countercharge this turn, then you can Soul Blast 1 and countercharge. So this is another way to help counterblast management while also just being a grade 2 body. So if you see this like in your grade 3 turn and you have access to the grade 3 order, you can start countercharging, refunding some stuff. If you haven't seen Bubble Mines, or your Bubble Mines can actually still countercharge. But again, Bubble Mines work in the battle phase, so that's how this card still works, even though we can countercharge already with Bubble Mines, for example. Onto the grade 1s, we're playing 4 copies of Iskra. So this card is basically the same as the grade 2 before. If you did not operate this turn, you can counterblast 1 and rest this unit and operate. So this is typically a card you want to see early on, because once you get to the grade 2 product order in the set order zone, then you can start really taking advantage of building a field. So this can be behind your Vanguard if you want, because it's going to rest itself, and then you can call something as a booster or maybe as an attacking rear guard on the other column, and then your grade 2 Vanguard can operate again to get another card and really start building a field that way too. So that's why I have played 4 copies of this card. And then even later on, if you need to operate during the main phase before you start going into your battle phase, you can have some flexibility there. Otherwise, it's just the 8k body as a booster, and if you reduce their power, like from a 13k Vanguard to an 8k, this can actually hit Vanguard too. So you could always utilize your grade 1s too, if necessary. 4 copies of Bubble Mine. So this is pretty self-explanatory. As long as you have a set order, you can, at the end of the battle that this unit boosted, it can go into Soul and countercharge 1. So you can call Bubble Mines and the other grade 2, and then Bubble Mine is a card that will go into Soul and countercharge. So even though you lose the rear guard, it was free to begin with, and then you can like refund countercharge and then fuel for the Soul for cards like Freiheit, for example. So it's just really synergetic, and you can be greedy more in this deck with like taking advantage of counterblast skills. So that's why I play 4 Bubble Mine. Some people have reduced it to maybe 3. But I tend to be a little more greedy, and I wanted to just have this available, especially as like you check the top 5. You want something useful to be called, whether it be in that turn or maybe in the following turn. So Bubble Mine is just one of those cards that just is useful in general. Lastly, the Sentinels. I played the 3-1 ratio. So again, Sanctitude is useful for like triple drive, you know, Chrono Jet and grade 4s, etc. This deck doesn't really need to call more bodies except for the ones that you have main deck that are useful rear guards. So I think this 3-1 ratio is just fine. I'm playing 4 copies of the crit that goes into Soul after it boosts and gives something 2k. This is just really there to help for the Soul, but I feel like it may not be as necessary. And I'm playing 3 copies of the regular crit over here. But I might change the ratios moving forward, because when you check top 5, the 5k body is more useful if you just so happen to check top 5 triggers or PGs. The 5K can make a difference versus then the 4K awkward number, and then also just trying to have soul. This deck, if you manage it well, your soul is pretty fine. You just have to be cognizant of that too. But so that's something that I'm messing with. So I just wanted to at least mention that. And then I am playing one copy of the overtrigger. This is super great with Welstra. The way that the attack patterns work too, you can have it where your rear guard, your first couple of rear guards can attack, whether it be the first or second battle, and then when Welstra and the other unit attacks, you can call the two maximums, and now your two rear guards can still attack and really take advantage of the Brent Gate overtrigger. You double the crit, double the attack power, 100 million, etc. So it's really synergetic, which I really like about this deck too. We're playing 4 copies of draw triggers, so the way that I looked at this is that this deck is still combo piece reliant, so just having the extra draw to help with dry checks or even damage checks for consistency, I think is appreciated. But you can also reduce this to 3 and then add an additional crit, so you have a crit and then the OT for more aggression. You can do that too, so I feel like either way is fine. And then for the heal triggers, I am playing the 3-1 ratio. Depending on the effect trigger that you want to play for the heal, whether it be the crits, the great less, or the restanding, just depends. I'm playing the crit one because of Ava, for example, but you could always play different heals depending on the local metagame that you have. So I'm going to show off kind of like a right progression example. And so with the mulligan, these cards I tend to prioritize just because they're really useful early on, and it kind of gets your deck going. So I recommend mulligan for these as a priority. And then whatever you get in your starting hand, let's say this is our starting hand. So this is what we got to work with. And so you draw for turn, let's say we're going first. In this example, we have 2 grade 2 product orders. That's not necessarily a bad thing. This can be used later on if you want to save it. And if you feel like maybe you don't have any reason to defend yourself just quickly, you can discard the crit trigger, go into your grade 1, nothing happens. You get a damage check on their turn, they attack you. This is our damage check, and let's say you go to your turn, you draw a card, we got a heal. Okay, and let's see, let's say we just want to go a little more greedy, so we're just discarding our triggers to go into the grade 2. And the grade 1 will proc, and you want to search for that grade 1 product order in this case it's in our deck. So I'm going to shuffle and then play it. And so let's say it's right here. So that way you guys can see it. And then the next thing you can do is you can directly play this one from hand. And so when you play it, you draw a card, and then you soul charge 1. So we got more copies of this card. We do have a counterblast to work with, so I'm going to call this Behind the Vanguard. So these are our cards. Rested in counterblast 1. Check the top 5. And as you can see, we got not so great choices, but we did have a rear guard body. So I'm going to call the grade 2, and you shuffle your deck. Then I'm going to use the Vanguard skill to Soul Blast 1 to operate the grade 2 to check top 5 again. So this is our options. I guess we'll call the Freiheit. So we're going to go for more of an aggression front row. And then what I typically do, if I have a Bulba Mine, I want to make sure that I have enough counterblast for the following turn so I can do an operation during my main phase. Because your opponent has the option to attack your rear guards, and if you don't have your damage face up, then you'll be counterblast denied. So just having the Bulba Mine already just to be able to countercharge could be useful. So you can do an L-shaped pattern here. Attack for 10k, and then Vanguard, and then your drive check would be a heal trigger. So in this case we would heal, but let's say it was just like a different trigger. And then you attack with Freiheit boosted, and then this will go into the Soul to countercharge. So that way you have a counterblast to work with next turn. And then let's say they attack you, they give you a damage, and then they attack this rear guard. And in my hand I have another copy, so I can let them have it if they really are adamant about that. So you can stand, draw for turn, and this is my hand so far. So there's a couple of ways you can do this. We do have the grade 2, and so we'll be able to get our maximum card, and we have a Bulba Mine to countercharge during the battle phase too, so that helps a lot. The grade 2 product order we can also play directly from hand, so you can actually keep this still. So the grade 1 can be used as a booster, So perhaps let's discard for the heal just to go a little more just aggressiveness. And then you can do Welstra. The grade 2 skill will activate. You send the grade 1. Really doesn't matter because you'll have another copy anyway of this card. And then draw a card. We draw another, wow, another copy. Soul Charge a maximum. Ooh, okay. That kind of hurt, but we still have some in the deck, fortunately. So if you want to make sure that you have a maximum, you can use this card. And since we do have a second one, you can discard this card and Counterblast 1, and then search your deck for the maximum. Then you can play it directly as well. And then now you can play the set order 2 as normal from hand and draw a card, Soul Charge 1. So we drew a Personal Right, and we also Soul Charge our Personal Right. So interesting. So at this point, what you can do is use this card skill to Counterblast 1 and operate the grade 3. You could do the grade 2 if you want to build a field, but I feel like we're fine enough. But I want to do this so that way we can reduce their Vanguard by 5k, retire something. And then because you did actually operate technically, that this can go off to Soul Blast 1 and then countercharge. So you can take advantage of that. It's a free operate essentially during the main phase. And if you want to be heavily aggressive, you can call this here and call this here as boosters. Also keep in mind that we operated, so Welstra actually will start getting the 5k, so he's already plus 5k. So if you want, you can attack with this column first. This is 18. Your opponent's Vanguard is minus 5k, so they're at 8k. But if we went first, then there will be 5k base at that point. At the end of the battle, this will go into Soul, countercharge 1. Then Vanguard can attack, operate the grade 3 order maximum, minus their 5k Vanguard, and retire something, and then use the second part of the skill to Counterblast 1, bounce your grade 2 back to hand, and call this to an open rearguard circle. So now you have 2 bodies to work with. Then this will be 23 with Twin Drive. There's a crit, so you can place it appropriately. Then you can attack with this column as 18. And then this will be 23. So wherever you put the trigger, whatever it is. But again, their Vanguard is minus 10k. These are hitting pretty good numbers, especially since you went first too. And then at the end of the turn, this will go back to the zone. And depending if they give you some more damage, or you draw a card. So we draw a card. And they kill this guy, let's say, for example. You go to your turn. Draw a card. And as you can see, your hand... This is what we have. And we have that Personal Right that we drew earlier. Draw into that. Personal Right activates. Then we can call a Fright Height, Counterblast 1, discard a card. And let's just say we're just gonna go for the win. Discard this. Search for the last copy of Maximum. If you have 2 copies of this card, you could technically search for both of them in one turn. And then play it immediately. Call Sordio, that we got a second copy actually. So that works out. Same thing with this. You can rest this, Counterblast 1, activate the grade 3, minus 5k, kill something. This activates Soul Blast 1, countercharge 1. Then you can call a booster, let's say Bubble Mine. We just so happen to draw the same cards. Again, we're playing playsets of these cards, so you're bound to see them. Most of your turns anyway. So you can attack. This is Persona Right, so this is 20k. Then on attack this, Soul Blast 2 to operate, let's say the grade 3, and minus 5 your opponent, and also retire, and then Counterblast 1 and bounce this and call this to a new rearguard essentially. Of course boosted. Then this will go into Soul. Actually, you don't have to do it right now because it's not necessary. And then Vanguard can attack, operate the same thing, kill something, minus 5k, Counterblast 1, bounce to grade 2, call the second copy. Now you have 2 of the maximums. Your Twin Drive, oh wait, draw that, and then that will be your next one. And then finally just attack with the columns. This goes into Soul, countercharge 1, this can attack, boom. So that is essentially the flow of the deck. As you can see, it's a little bit combo piece reliant. It makes you think a little bit too. You can start thinking about like reducing power, retiring, or maybe building a massive field. Just depends on what you have available. and really take advantage of cards like the Grade 1 to operate even during the main phase, etc. So this deck, I think, has become more playable in my eyes, but I feel like it's not necessarily the best deck in the metagame. So do keep in mind with that. I think as we get Versatile Assembler and also the Grade 1, that's like the Doghouse, that would help this deck a little bit more. And also just like the Grade 2 is phenomenal to call as a body, and also just search for more of these cards and just start building advantage more with the new promos. So hopefully in English we'll get them soon. Right, Bushiroad? So here's hoping for the best. And let me know if you guys have different builds too. I'm always open to that too. I know there's like the Grade 1 counter charger that you could put behind Vanguard if you want, instead of having that Grade 2 Sordeo as I have. Just let me know in the comments. I like to engage with the community for more feedback as well. And if you want to support the channel, use the affiliated links like Trading Cartman, 50 Card Shop, TCG Player. And also, if you want to level up your skill level, you can book a METAFY session with me just to have one-on-one coaching sessions. Or you can even pick up my book on how to win card fight tournaments. That's on Amazon as well. So until the next one, amigos, bye!